Thank you so much for joining us today for this chapter of time-hopping hero Ethan's First Leaps. We truly appreciate you taking the time to read along with us. Just a reminder that the English subtitles for this video are accurate, and YouTube offers some fantastic tools to enhance your learning. If needed, you can use the auto-translate function to view subtitles in your preferred language, Portuguese already provided on screen. You can also slow down the video playback speed if you'd like to listen more carefully. Thanks again for spending your valuable time with us. Enjoy the story. Time-hopping hero, Ethan's First Leaps. Copyright 2025. Chunking to Fluency. Chapter 8. The Echoed Whisper. The silence in Billy Tipton's bedroom was heavy, broken only by the hum of the old fan oscillating slowly in the corner. He and Ethan, now 16 and facing a weight far heavier than any high school challenge, sat across from each other, the echoes of Walter's broken confession still reverberating between them. His father's raw admission, his powerlessness to forget Clara Bell, his desperate plea of not knowing how to talk about it, had left an open wound in their home, a wound they were now compelled to heal. "There's no other way," Billy said, his voice quiet but firm. "He needs something that only she can give him. A message. Something impossible." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "It's the most dangerous kind of trip, Billy. Not to observe, but to intervene in the most delicate way. You're asking to pluck a single thread from a moment that can't be changed." "But it has to be," Billy insisted, his gaze distant, envisioning the fragmented memories of Clara Bell he'd witnessed. "He's drowning, Ethan. Mom's drowning. If this can give him even a sliver of hope, a reason to fight, we have to try." The decision was made. They meticulously prepared the time machine, double-checking the temporal coordinates for Clara Bell's accident in 19XX. The air in the workshop was thick with a new kind of tension, one born not of curiosity, but of a desperate, profound love. This was their most audacious mission yet, a journey not for personal gain or historical understanding, but for the very soul of a family. The familiar hum built to a deafening roar as they engaged the chronometer. The workshop dissolved into streaks of light and shadow, the very fabric of time twisting around them. Then, with a lurch that wrenched their stomachs, they were there. The crisp autumn air of 19XX, heavy with the familiar scent of lilacs from a nearby garden, filled Billy's lungs. He heard the distant, growing rumble of a train, and his heart pounded in his chest, knowing what was about to unfold. The screech of metal on metal, the sickening boom, it was just as horrific as Billy remembered. He saw her, Clara Bell, beautiful even in her last moments, lying tragically on the asphalt. A wave of overwhelming grief washed over him, a grief not just for his father's past, but for the inherent cruelty of this moment. Tears streamed down Billy's face, unbidden and unstoppable. Driven by an impulse stronger than any temporal rule, he knelt beside her, ignoring Ethan's hushed warning. Gently, he took her cold, fragile hand in his. Her eyes, clouded with pain, found his, and in them, Billy sensed an impossible flicker of understanding, a recognition that transcended time itself. She knew. She understood the boy kneeling before her, the impossible messenger. "He loved you so much, Clarabelle," Billy whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "He still does, always." A faint smile touched Clarabelle's lips, ethereal and profound. Her gaze remained fixed on Billy, a silent plea in her eyes. Then her lips moved, and a whisper, impossibly clear amidst the chaos, brushed against Billy's consciousness. It was a poetic phrase, imbued with the sweetness of shared secrets, followed by a tender, intimate name. Words that resonated with a private world of affection, a secret language shared only between her and Walter. Billy locked the words into his memory, fiercely, indelibly. He felt the light begin to fade in her eyes, even as she was being carefully moved by the first responders. Billy did not accompany her to the emergency room. Their window in time was closing. The world stretched, twisted, and snapped back into place. They were home. The workshop was silent, save for the hum of the cooling time machine and the frantic thumping of Billy's heart. He felt utterly drained, yet a powerful sense of purpose surged through him. He had done it. Billy found his father in the living room, still lost in a haze. Taking a deep breath, he walked directly to Walter, his gaze steady. "Dad," he began, his voice clear, carrying the impossible truth. "I know why you hurt so much, and I know, because I saw her. I went back, through time with a machine." Walter's head snapped up. His eyes narrowed with the familiar warning that quickly turned to disbelief. "Time? What are you talking about, boy? You're making no sense." "She knew, Dad," Billy pushed on, ignoring the skepticism, his voice imbued with the unshakable certainty of experience. "And she told me something for you. Something only she could tell you. She called you my North Star. And she said, 'Remember our garden of lilacs, my North Star. Find your way back to me there.' And she called you Walt, my only Walt." The words hung in the air, shattering everything. Walter's face drained of color. His jaw went slack. "My North Star," he whispered, a guttural sound, his voice raw with a pain that was both fresh and ancient. "Lilacs, my Walt." The tumbler slipped from his grasp, shattering on the floor. Tears from a lifetime of suppressed grief streamed down Walter's face. He crumpled, sinking onto the sofa, his body racked with a sorrow that had festered for such a long time. It was a breakdown, deep and visceral, an admission to the truth he'd buried so fiercely. He was powerless, powerless to forget her, powerless to talk about it, powerless to stop the self-destruction. But this time, he saw a path. His gaze, still wet with tears, met Billy's. I've been a fool, son, he rasped, his voice raw with remorse. A fool. What I've done to you, to your mother, trying to forget her. It only brought dishonor to Clarabelle's memory. She deserves better. Your mother deserves better. And you deserve better. He staggered to the liquor cabinet, took out the bottles, and without hesitation, poured them all down the sink. The pungent smell filled the room, a symbolic cleansing. The change wasn't instant, but it was profound. Walter Tipton, now stripped bare of his defenses, began the arduous climb towards healing. He sought out Martha, his apologies raw and heartfelt, and a fragile new dialogue began to bloom in their home. He spent his days in the workshop, not just passively existing, but actively organizing, cleaning, putting his keen mind for logistics to use. He was learning, watching Thomas Pruitt, a newfound respect growing for the quiet science teacher. Walter was becoming trustworthy again, his focus sharpening, his destructive habits receding like a bad dream. Weeks passed. Thomas Pruitt, already burdened by the weight of Mr. Abernathy's legacy, noticed the transformation in Walter with a growing sense of awe and relief. One afternoon, Mr. Abernathy, now frail and confined mostly to his armchair, received news that his doctors gave him only 2 weeks to live. Thomas found Walter diligently sweeping the workshop floor, a rare, quiet focus in his eyes. "Walter," Thomas began, his voice gentle, "I just spoke with Mr. Abernathy's doctor. He doesn't have much time left, maybe 2 weeks." He paused, then continued, his gaze direct and earnest. "I've seen the change in you, truly seen it. Your commitment, your clarity, it's deeply moving. And Mr. Abernathy, he trusted you. He saw something a long time ago. I need someone here, someone I can rely on, someone who understands this place. Would you consider coming to work here, learning the ropes, helping me manage the shop as he transitions, and then taking on more responsibility?" Walter looked up. His eyes, though still carrying a shadow of past pain, now held a spark of purpose. "Mr. Pruitt," he said, his voice steady, "I would be honored. I want to make things right. For Clarabelle, for Martha, for Billy, and for Mr. Abernathy." And so, in the precious days that followed, Walter began his new role, diligently learning the intricacies of the pawnshop, working alongside Thomas. His attention to detail, a vestige of his old railway days, resurfaced, channeled into the new purpose. He wasn't just an employee, he was part of a new beginning. It was in this period of quiet hope and burgeoning responsibility that Mr. Abernathy passed away peacefully in his sleep, just as the doctors had predicted. His legacy, the pawnshop, the workshop, and the incredible machine within, now officially transitioned to Thomas Pruitt. But it was clear to Thomas, as he watched Walter meticulously sort old ledgers and discuss inventory with a clarity he hadn't seen in years, that Mr. Abernathy had known precisely what he was doing. Walter Tipton, the once broken man, was ready to help carry the burden and perhaps inspire new missions. He was becoming keenly interested in the stories of the customers who walked through the pawnshop doors, each bringing not just an item, but a piece of their own entangled history. The end of Chapter 8.
Give it a like, will ya?
Frases em bloco de interesse para o capítulo 8, Chunk Phrases of Interest for Chapter 8. Número 1. Rugido ensurdecedor. A deafening roar. A deafening roar. Esta frase em bloco se refere a um som tão alto que se torna abrangente, geralmente indicando imenso poder ou intensidade. This chunk phrase refers to a sound that is so loud it becomes all-encompassing, often indicating immense power or intensity. Example: o rugido ensurdecedor do motor da máquina do tempo era mais alto que o de um trem. Example, English. The deafening roar of the time machine's engine was louder than a train. The deafening roar of the time machine's engine was louder than a train. Número 2. A estrela do norte. The North Star. The North Star. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma estrela proeminente no céu do norte, mas também pode se referir a uma metáfora que representa um princípio orientador, uma constante ou um farol de esperança, muitas vezes simbolizando uma presença inabalável. This chunk phrase refers to a prominent star in the northern sky, but also can refer to a metaphor that represents a guiding principle, a constant, or a beacon of hope, often symbolizing unwavering presence. Example, Português. Ela o chamava de minha estrela do norte, guia constante. Example, English. She called him my North Star, a constant guide. She called him my North Star, a constant guide. Número 3. Despojado de suas defesas. Stripped of his defenses. Stripped of his defenses. Esta frase em bloco se refere ao ato de ter suas barreiras emocionais ou psicológicas removidas, tornando-se vulnerável e aberto a experiências ou sentimentos profundos. This chunk phrase refers to the act of having one's emotional or psychological barriers removed, making one vulnerable and open to profound experiences or feelings. Example, Português, Walter. Agora despojado de suas defesas, começou a se curar. Example, English. Walter, now stripped of his defenses, began to heal. Walter, now stripped of his defenses, began to heal. Número 4. Tornar-se confiável. To become trustworthy. To become trustworthy. Esta frase em bloco se refere ao processo de ganhar ou recuperar a confiança dos outros por meio de ações positivas, consistentes e confiabilidade demonstrada. This chunk phrase refers to the process of gaining or regaining the trust of others through consistent positive actions, and demonstrated reliability. Example: Português. Walter estava se tornando confiável novamente. Example: English. Walter was becoming trustworthy again. Walter was becoming trustworthy again. Número 5. Profundamente comovente. Deeply moving. Deeply moving. Esta frase em bloco se refere a algo que afeta os sentimentos de alguém de uma forma poderosa e significativa, muitas vezes inspirando uma forte resposta emocional. This chunk phrase refers to something that affects one's feelings in a powerful and meaningful way, often inspiring a strong emotional response. Example: Português. Thomas disse: "Sua clareza é profundamente comovente." Example: English. Thomas said, "Your clarity, it's deeply moving." Thomas said, "Your clarity, it's deeply moving." Número 6. Atenção aos detalhes. Attention to detail. Attention to detail. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma abordagem meticulosa e completa de tarefas ou observações, indicando cuidado e precisão. This chunk phrase refers to a meticulous and thorough approach to tasks or observations, indicating carefulness and precision. Example: Sua atenção aos detalhes ressurgiu em sua nova função. Example: English. His attention to detail resurfaced in his new role. His attention to detail resurfaced in his new role. Número 7. Falecer pacificamente. To pass away peacefully. To pass away peacefully. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma morte tranquila e serena, frequentemente usada para descrever os momentos finais de alguém sem luta. This chunk phrase refers to a quiet and serene death, often used to describe someone's final moments without struggle. Example: Português. O Sr. Abernathy faleceu pacificamente enquanto dormia. Example: English. Mr. Abernathy passed away peacefully in his sleep. Mr. Abernathy passed away peacefully in his sleep. Número 8. Uma ferida aberta. An open wound. An open wound. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma lesão física em que a pele é rompida ou, metaforicamente, a uma fonte de dor ou sofrimento emocional persistente que permanece sem cura e sensível. This chunk phrase refers to a physical injury where the skin is broken, or metaphorically, a source of persistent emotional pain or distress that remains unhealed and sensitive. Example: Português. A confissão do pai deixou uma ferida aberta em sua casa. Example: English. His father's confession left an open wound in their home. His father's confession left an open wound in their home. Número 9. O fio de esperança. A sliver of hope. a sliver of hope. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma pequena porção ou quantidade de otimismo ou expectativa por um resultado positivo, geralmente em uma situação terrível. This chunk phrase refers to a very small piece or amount of optimism or expectation for a positive outcome, often in a dire situation. Example, português. Se isso puder lhe dar um fio de esperança, temos que tentar. Example, English. If this can give him even a sliver of hope, we have to try. If this can give him even a sliver of hope, we have to try. Número 10. Raios de luz. Streaks of light. Streaks of light. Esta frase em bloco se refere a efeitos visuais, particularmente durante movimentos rápidos, distorções temporais ou experiências abstratas. This chunk phrase refers to visual effects, particularly during rapid movement, temporal distortions, or abstract experiences. Example, português. A oficina se dissolveu em raios de luz e sombra. Example, English. The workshop dissolved into streaks of light and shadow. The workshop dissolved into streaks of light and shadow. Número 11. O ronco de um trem. The rumble of a train. The rumble of a train. Esta frase em bloco se refere ao som característico, baixo e vibrante, feito por um trem em movimento, frequentemente usado para criar atmosfera ou prenunciar um evento. This chunk phrase refers to the characteristic low, vibrating sound made by a moving train, often used to build atmosphere or foreshadow an event. Example, português. Ele ouviu o ronco distante e crescente de um trem. Example, English. He heard the distant, growing rumble of a train. He heard the distant, growing rumble of a train. Número 12. Sobrecarregado pelo peso. Burdened by the weight. Burdened by the weight. Esta frase em bloco se refere a um estado de sobrecarga por uma responsabilidade ou fardo emocional, sugerindo uma carga emocional ou mental pesada. This chunk phrase refers to a state of being overwhelmed by a responsibility or emotional burden, suggesting a heavy emotional or mental load. Example, português. Thomas estava sobrecarregado pelo peso do legado do Sr. Abernathy. Example, English. Thomas was burdened by the weight of Mr. Abernathy's legacy. Thomas was burdened by the weight of Mr. Abernathy's legacy. Número 13. O ar estava carregado. The air was thick. The air was thick. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma atmosfera palpável, geralmente de tensão, emoção ou um cheiro forte, criando uma forte impressão sensorial. This chunk phrase refers to a palpable atmosphere, often of tension, emotion, or a strong scent, creating a strong sensory impression. Example, português. O ar estava carregado com um novo tipo de tensão. Example, English. The air was thick with a new kind of tension. The air was thick with a new kind of tension. Número 14. Em busca de ganho pessoal. For personal gain. For personal gain. Esta frase em bloco se refere a algo feito principalmente para a vantagem ou lucro próprio, geralmente contrastado com ações para benefício de outros. This chunk phrase refers to something done primarily for one's own advantage or profit, usually contrasted with actions for others' benefit. Example, português. A missão deles não era em busca de ganho pessoal. Example, English. Their mission was not for personal gain. Their mission was not for personal gain. O fim das frases em bloco de interesse para o capítulo 8. The end of chunk phrases of interest for Chapter 8.
We hope that by listening to the story and reviewing the chunk phrases of interest, you've had a chance to increase your English vocabulary in an enjoyable way. If you enjoyed this chapter and want to continue your journey with Ethan and his time-hopping adventures, please subscribe to the Chunking to Fluency channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to share this video with anyone who might enjoy it or is learning English. And don't forget to give it a like. Finally, if you hit the notification bell icon, you'll be sure to know when the next chapter of time-hopping hero Ethan's First Leaps is released. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to sharing more stories with you soon. Be blessed.